Y'all, things got bloody and brutal real quick. And I got to say, this might be my favorite episode so far. I mean, tears were shed, blood was shed, innards were shed. It was just a lot going on. But before we get into all the drama and all the brutality, let me start off by saying welcome back if you're an anime and beyond veteran. And if you're new here, welcome as well. Here on the Anime and Beyond channel, I have many interests. I like almost everything, and we try not to be too limited over here. I appreciate all of the support and the continued support, but after watching this episode, episode 4, it looks like Nolan is also going to need a little bit of support as well, seeing as the Viltrumites are over Nolan and they did not come to play. For starters, I did not expect Mark to hug Nolan. Like, I expected Mark to go through a bunch of emotions, which he did, but hugging Nolan, hugging Omni-Man, the very person responsible for everything, that kind of caught me off guard. That hug, to me, it shows just how big Mark's heart is. And not gonna lie, seeing Omni-Man's reaction to Mark hugging him, that felt very wholesome. Now granted, Mark was still upset not only because of what Omni-Man did, but he was upset because he felt like he was lied to. So to be honest, I really don't blame Mark for going through this turmoil of emotions. He's entitled to feel all of those emotions because he's probably still trying to wrap his mind and everything else around everything that happened. And I feel like the same thing can be said about Omni-Man. Right after he left Earth, we got to see how Omni-Man dealt with that. I mean, he shed tears, he's floating around space, he seems miserable. So this has taken a toll on Omni-Man as well, and that was pretty interesting to see. Something else I found very wholesome was Omni-Man telling Mark that he missed him. Now I can't help but get Vegeta vibes from Omni-Man, just to a degree. Only because Vegeta was not always the family man that he is now. Vegeta started off as this cold-blooded warrior Saiyan from a warrior race, to now being this great and amazing dad and husband and Super. Vegeta has really amazing character development, and I'm just wondering if the same can be said for Omni-Man or if he's heading in that direction.
Stay away from my children, Lucan. You knew the consequences when you had them.
In this episode, we see just how confused Nolan is by his own actions and his own feelings, and he's even turning to Mark and asking Mark why does he feel some type of way about the Thraxans when they're weak. And of course, Mark is naturally feeling some type of way because he's like, why weren't you feeling this way on Earth? Which is a very valid question, and I feel like this whole experience is probably bittersweet for Mark, especially when Mark sees Omni-Man's new relationship and he sees his half-brother. Now, I wasn't expecting the Viltrumites to show up so soon, and I was kind of looking forward to seeing how Omni-Man would go about training Mark, but this episode still put a few things into perspective. Like, for instance, how we see how Mark is pretty conflicted, but he still decides to help his dad and the Thraxans in the end. We also kind of get an idea of just how strong Mark can be when he stops holding back. And we also kind of get an idea of how he would hold up against another Viltrumite. I know Mark fought his dad before, but I never really counted that personally because that's his dad. So obviously Mark is going to be very hesitant and reluctant to hurt his own father. Mark and Nolan, they put up a really good fight, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Nolan. I feel like Nolan will probably be executed and there's probably nothing Mark can do to stop it. Because, in the first place, who would be able to help Mark? Because Mark can't take on all those Viltrumites by himself, let alone slaughter them when he was barely able to slaughter one. Mark is kind of a kind and gentle soul, just like Gohan from Dragon Ball Z, and taking someone's life isn't something that they want to do. On top of that, Mark is now responsible for Omni-Man's mission, and at the moment, I don't see how Mark is going to get out of that. What I'd kind of like to know is what exactly is going to happen to Andrissa, I think that's how you say her name, and Mark's half-brother. I don't think they will be safe, especially since the Viltrumites know about their existence, so I'm kind of curious as to what's going to happen with them. There's a few other things I briefly wanted to get into as well, including Donald realizing that he's a clone, the Mauler Twins, at least one of them, realizing that it's better that they don't know certain things, like knowing which one is the original, and I'd like to get into Debbie and Adam Eve as well. In a nutshell, I felt really bad for Donald this whole episode. Donald pieced some things together that he wasn't supposed to piece together, and he saw some things that he was not supposed to see. Now that's kind of left him in some dangerous territory, because if I knew that I was a clone, I'd be terrified for one, and I'd question everything. And I can imagine that would probably take a toll on my mental health, and I definitely wouldn't know who to trust. So I can't wait to see how Donald is going to maneuver through all of that. Next up, let's get into the Mauler Twins. I'm glad they squashed this whole superior or who's better than the original thing, because while it was pretty funny and it seemed like a running gag, we clearly see the dangers that come with knowing that you're the original and what that means for the other. In short, it just means never-ending disrespect. But that got nipped in the bud real quick. As for Debbie, my girl is still going through it, and I can't even begin to imagine what she's going through. I had always kind of felt bad for Bulma during Dragon Ball Z when Vegeta snuffed out all those people at the World Tournament, but when you think about it, Omni-Man destroying a whole bunch of people on a planet is a whole lot more intense. Plus, unlike what happened in Dragon Ball Z, these people can't come back. And as we can see, she's still going through a whole bunch of emotions, a whole lot of anger, a whole lot of guilt, and I'm hoping that Art, who came to visit her this episode, will kind of help her get in a better headspace, because Debbie really needs that. As for Adam Eve, I think she's kind of treading into dangerous territory as well, because she's getting into that space where she's pushing away her friends and possibly trying to deal with things on her own. She's not communicating, she's not being honest, at least with others, and I think that's really taking a toll on her, and personally, I think that could potentially lead her on a dark path, especially if she continues to bottle these things in and continues to make mistakes. Samantha could use a good bit of support before it's too late. She kind of strikes me as the type that's there for everyone else, lends an ear to everyone else's problems, but doesn't want to receive the same in return because maybe she feels like she's being a burden. Either way, I'm looking forward to a lot of things. I can't wait for the next episode to come out. Seems like it may be a while, but it's definitely going to be worth the wait. Y'all be sure to let me know what y'all thought of this episode. Did y'all have a favorite moment, a favorite fight, a favorite anything? Do y'all have any predictions or theories? Make sure you let me know down below in the comments. As always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. SierraNovaa is out.